Perfect. So good afternoon. Happy end of month. It's August. I can't believe that we've been doing this for 8 months. We started in January. We started this journey together, this journey of professional and personal development. We started together and we said we're going to do this every single month, last Sunday of every single month. And here we are. It's already month 8. We started with some good goals. Some of us are achieving them. Some of us are lagging behind. Some of us have just chewed up the paper and thrown them away. And all situations are fine. What is important that is that we're still here, we're still talking about it, we're still keeping the ideas fresh in our minds. And whenever we're ready, we're going to start. And that's also okay. Today, our meeting is going to take a different format. Today, there's no presentation. I won't be talking much. I know that you don't like my voice, so don't worry about that. You won't be hearing much of me today. Today, we have a special guest in the room. If you haven't noticed, he's looking fabulous. He's smiling. He has a fireplace in summer. Like, you can't go wrong with this guest. His name is Mark Momplaisir. He's a seasoned self-help author. He's an organizational psychologist. He's a learning and development specialist and a wellness coach. He's dedicated his life to empowering individuals like ourselves on these self-discovery and personal growth journeys. He's written 2 books so far. The first one was it was titled Strong Women. Listen to this title. And all I'm going to say is the title. I'm not describing it. It says Strong Women, Fed Up Men, Defeated Sons, Broken Daughters, Healing Generational Pain. I mean, all of us here fall somewhere in these categories. Somewhere, 1 or 2, we might find ourselves there. So I entreat you to look for that book, and it's a good read. The reason why he's here today really is about his second book, which is entitled The Power of You. He inspires us and guides us to take the journey of self-discovery, personal growth, and purpose, as well as transformation. So with that in mind, Mark is here to offer us practical insights and actionable advice to help readers, help us unlock our full potential and live our best lives. Now, why did I invite Mark here? Over the past 8 months, every time we have these programs and we ask you for feedback, there's always somebody who says, how can we develop emotional intelligence? How can we become more self-aware? It's always a feature in our evaluations. So I said, you know what? Maybe I'm not saying something right. Maybe I'm not hitting the right notes. So let me bring the superstar here and let's hear from him. So without saying anything else, please, let's welcome Mark Momplaisir to our little group here. And yes, Mark, you're welcome. You can wave, you can say hi, you can put it in the chat. Thank you, Mark. And please come off mute and say hi to everyone, and we can get the conversation started. Just tell us,
Okay.
I said a lot about you, but just tell us what I didn't say.
All right. Thank you so much, Khadijah. That was a very grand and elaborated introduction. Thank you so much for that. Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Momplaisir. As Khadijah said, I am super excited to be here with you. I'm always excited to discuss self-development and self-growth. I have gone through my own process of self-growth, and I'm still going through it. It's not a destinational journey. It's something that you go through every single day of your life, and you have to constantly work on being that self-aware and having that desire to grow. So I am excited to be here with you and to have a conversation. This is not just me giving you advice. It's just us having a conversation where we teach each other and learn from one another. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
All right. All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome once again. We're just going to go straight to it because I've been asked this question too many times, and I want to hear your perspective on it. What is emotional intelligence? and why is it so important for personal and professional development?
Absolutely. So, emotional intelligence is your ability to either perceive, understand, and use emotions, your own emotions, right, and others. So you have to be able to understand how to navigate your own emotion, how to manage them, and how, and how to also navigate through other people's emotions, because we are living with others, and oftentimes the way we feel and think don't always align with how, how they perceive us or how they behave around us. So we have to know how to navigate through all of that so we can actually have a better experience, whether in our relationships, in our workplace, in our own lives. So understanding how to manage your emotions, understand how to understand your own emotions when you are upset, when you are disappointed, right? Angry, whatever it is. So when you can effectively have that self-awareness to design, right? What you want to experience in your relationships, in your own life, at work. That's emotional intelligence, and I think we can all work on developing that skill, and that way we can, again. So I have this theme in the book, right? Designing your own superpower life, and that requires self-awareness. It requires having emotional intelligence to be able to do so. So you muted.
Yeah. So I always think about emotional intelligence, and I know I always tell you this. I feel like sometimes I get trapped in like on this journey because I'm so alert and I'm always trying to understand my emotions and what's going on around me and also trying to empathize with other people's emotions. I find that sometimes it makes me lag in decision making because I'm not trying to figure out, is this person really saying what they're saying? Are they trying to upset me? Or is it that they just don't know what they're saying and they don't expect what they're saying to upset me?
Right.
Okay. So how can the understanding of my emotions and also just trying to understand my environment and myself, how can that understanding help me manage the impact of my decision making and also really the speed of the decision making?
Right. Well, so what I usually like to tell people, what do you want to experience? Right? Whether it's an interaction, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's in your own life, what do you want to experience in life, and what do you want others to experience from interacting with you? Because you can't necessarily control what other people do, right? So you can only control what you do and how you respond to what they do. And so when you can identify what you want to experience, you can be intentional with your actions and reactions, right? And you respond, not necessarily reaction, but we're going to have reactions too, right? These just have to be intentional about how you react to
Yeah.
certain things.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, again, dealing with other people, not being able to decipher what they're doing is,
Yeah.
again, you have to bring it back to yourself, right? And I usually tell people not to make it about yourself because you don't want to personalize everything. But when it comes to you taking accountability, taking responsibility for your responses, for your actions, your behaviors, that's on you, right? Because you can't control what other people do, like I said before. And so you have to ask yourself, what do I want to experience? And, from this conversation,
Mhm.
right? What do I want out of this conversation? So it always comes down to being intentional. It always comes down to being empathetic. It always comes down to active listening. And that way you can actually not just respond, not just hearing what you're feeling, but hearing what's actually happening. Right. Because
I,
oftentimes we get into, I'm feeling this way. This must be what it is. But in reality, it's not.
oh my God.
So when you can be intentional and say, it may sound a little calculated, right? Which is
Mhm.
fine, but you have to be that way because again, we all dealing with so much around us, whether it's at work, in your personal relationship with children, right? We're dealing with a lot, so you have to be intentional with everything. And sometimes it may feel like It may feel like work. It may feel like I'm like, okay, I have to navigate, I have to, tiptoe around not expressing exactly what I
Mm.
want to say at this moment. But that's what emotional intelligence is. You can't say everything you feel. You can't react on how you feel all the time, right?
Sure,
So you have to ask yourself, what is this going to render? Am I going to get the outcome I desire? Am I going to build the relationship I want? Am I going to, have the life I want to have if I respond this way, if I react this way? Right? So you have to again bring it back to yourself and be intentional, right? Take responsibility for your own emotions, for your own responses, your own actions, and say, okay, this is for me, not necessarily for other people, because the way you deal with people, it also affects you.
sure,
So you have to ask yourself, what do I want to get from this? What do I want to experience out of this? And then make decisions based on what you want. And again, make sure what you want is also healthy, right? And constructive, and
true,
helpful
true,
for you. Because sometimes we're in a space where we're like, okay, I'm mad right now. And what would help me is to, tell somebody off, right? Or to react and get into a physical altercation. But that doesn't really help you if you can avoid it. Sometimes
true,
you can, but the goal is to always aim for the best and healthiest outcome.
true, 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 true. So, all that I'm hearing right now is, first of all, we have to be diplomatic because we can't just say what we feel and what we think, even though it's so exhilarating when you do it. So we hear you. We hear you say that. My question then is, it sounds to me like you have to be alert, you have to be in touch with yourself. You also have to be able to decode your environment, right? So, how much of emotional intelligence is born with, and how much of it is learned behavior? And how difficult is it to unlearn certain behaviors to be able to be emotionally intelligent?
That is a great question. I think we all were born with enough emotional intelligence because we were created to have relationships with one another, right? Whether it's a professional relationship, a personal, parental, children, or just friends, right? We were all designed
Yeah,
to have those type of relationships. However, we live in a society that's constantly telling us how to be, constantly telling us this is what you need to do. And also, we're around people with different cultures, different background, who have different customs and routines, right? So we have to learn how to not just accept them for who and what they are, but to also tolerate, right? And learn how to work with them. So I think we were all born again with the ability to have healthy emotional intelligence. But then again, some of us grew up in household that weren't healthy, right? Maybe maybe you grew up in a household that was the way they communicate was loud and chaotic and aggressive. And so we have to learn to unlearn a lot of those patterns because they're not conducive to healthy relationships.
sure.
We can find confirmation biases from a lot of people, but at the end of the day, they're not going to help us live a life that's fulfilling and rewarding and happy, right? And so we have to learn to unlearn a lot of habits and patterns we were taught by parents or whoever we used to hang out with when we were kids, right? Or whoever our friends are now, because we learn every day, right? And it's hard to unlearn some of those patterns. And that's where self-awareness come in. That's where your desire to want something healthier, to want something different, right? Because at the end of the day, it's on the individual. It's on you. Right. No one can take that journey for you. It's something that you have to embark for yourself, right? Embark on for yourself. And you have to be willing to look at what's not working, right? We can all get used to, the unhealthy patterns. We can all get used to things that are hurting us, right? But at the end of the day, is that really what you want to experience? Because I truly believe that we all want to live a fulfilling, happy, satisfying life. As hard as it may be to get that, but we all want it. So I think at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what do I want to experience? And then have the willingness to be
Mhm.
self, have the willingness to talk to people who can actually help you get to that point. Don't get defensive, right? You know, when somebody makes a correction or tell you something that's not confirming what you're experiencing, right? We all want to hear what we want to hear because it makes us feel good. But if you want to, if you want to live a healthier life, it's not always going to be about what makes you feel good. It's about what's going to make you be good, right? What's going to make you do good.
Oh, I like
Um,
that. It's
so
not
you know,
about what's gonna make you feel good,
right,
but
right,
it's about what's gonna make you be good.
exactly.
That
So
is
it's
so true.
yeah. So it's a responsibility that falls on us, on the individual, to want something that maybe they didn't have when they were growing up. Maybe you look at your and it's in my I think both of my books I talk about. I have a chapter in the first book, Strong Women, that talks about no, really, it's not you, it's me. And then that's just me taking accountability for even things that I thought were normal, right? I mean, I grew up in Haiti where there are a lot of dysfunctions. And for me, I knew early on I wanted something different. And so even when I was younger, I would, blame my parents, right? I would blame everything. Well, no, this was your fault. This happened, or I'm this way because of, such and such, right? Because of my environment. But at some point, I knew I needed to take accountability and take responsibility for what I wanted to experience, and then take steps to get to that point.
True, true. Oh my God. You have dropped so many gems in that one question. But I'm gonna stop here and say, everybody in the room, please, if you have any questions, raise your hands, put it in the chat. Matter of fact, we're stopping right now to hear some questions. So if you have any questions so far, please raise your hands. Come off mute, write it in the chat so that Mark can give us all his wisdom before he leaves us. We're halfway through, so hopefully you're enjoying it so far and would like to hear from you. Anybody has a question?
I love questions. Remember, it's a conversation,
It's
right?
a
We're together.
conversation.
We're doing it together. So
It's
don't hesitate.
Mhm. All right. So I don't see any questions in the chat. So we're going to keep going. No questions so far. Okay, great. Um, right. So then you said something about confirmation bias. I don't know if you would like to expatiate on that
Sure.
because I think most of the conflict emotionally and socially comes from these confirmation biases. So
Right.
if you could just explain to us what that is and how that impacts our journeys on becoming more emotionally intelligent.
Right. So, well, we live in a world where social media makes it easy, right, to have a voice. It's great. It's great, right? But so what confirmation bias does is if I disagree with something, or if I have a view on something, I can Google search somebody, right, who has the same view, right, to confirm my views. And again, it's not always a bad thing, but I think oftentimes because we have access to so many people, to so much, we don't have a reliable source that we can go to, like like a grandparent, right? A grand uncle, grand aunt that we can go to and say, I'm experiencing this. What do you think I should do? Right? Or I'm feeling this way. Can you help me get some clarity? But instead of doing that, or maybe because we don't have access to to those line of resources anymore, so we go on social media. We go to friends who have the same mindsets as we do. So confirmation bias really is just getting confirmation for what we think is right, even when it's not, from people who think and believe
The
like
same
we do.
things we do.
Exactly. Right. So I think, if you want to increase your emotional intelligence, you have to go against that.
Mm,
Right? And which was why I said earlier, if somebody tells you something that that doesn't make you feel good, don't dismiss it. Right? Doesn't mean that you have to take it in and let it affect you in a negative way, but I think receive it, process it, and then that way reflect on it, and then you can say, well, maybe I really act this way. Maybe I really do this, right? And then start again analyzing your own patterns, your own ways of reacting or responding or doing things, and then say, okay, maybe I can work on this, right? Maybe I can, really, take this into consideration and try not to repeat the same patterns or same behaviors, and maybe that would improve my relationship. So always trying to find a silver lining of advice, right, or
mm,
or feedback.
mhm.
And again, it's not going to feel good always, right, but taking accountability for your own, again, reactions and emotions and feelings, that way you can actually learn to grow and not just receiving feedback that aligns with your belief system.
Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, we have a question. So Samira wants to ask a question. Samira, if you can come off mute.
Okay. Hi, this is Samira.
Hello.
Yeah.
So something happened recently, right? Can you hear me? I hope,
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you. We can hear you.
I don't know, okay, how I receive things, I feel like other people can receive it the same way.
Mm,
That's so like something happened recently, right? There was this girl, we normally meet in a social group, and then we all talk and it's loud and everybody just talk and it's okay. Oh shit, I have to close the door. Um, th- there was one girl, she had like a problem with her skin, and it was obvious because she was wearing things that was making it very obvious. So I talked to her like, hey, what's happening? Like, did you see this? And she's like, yeah. I said, oh, maybe I have something like this because I feel like this is not really okay, and you know. And then we all talk, and then I helped her. But then later someone called me and she said I wasn't supposed to talk to her like that. And then I was like, how? She's like, I should have called her like one sided. And I'm like, okay. I felt like it was something that was obvious to everybody. And then it shouldn't feel like it's a private something that I should approach her with. And then I don't know if that could also align with me not I hope you understand my question.
Yeah,
Um
I do.
yeah, because for me personally, I think I would have taken it okay. So I treated someone like that, but then I don't know.
No, that's a great question. I'm sorry. What's
Yeah,
your name again? I can't see.
Samira.
Samira.
some-
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Samira. Thank you. We all think that other people see us the way we see ourselves, right? Or at least we think they should. But usually that's not the case. Let me ask you, how did that person respond to your feedback?
She was pretty okay. She's like, yeah, it's happening all over her body and she doesn't know what to do.
Mm,
I thought she received it quite well.
Okay.
Ashraf.
Okay.
Yeah, but then her friend, the other girl around, was called me later, and she was like, the way I approached it was not okay. So I don't know.
Right. So no, no. So they're
the face
different.
of the third party.
Right. There are different prongs to this approach, right? This question. Her friend may have felt that she would have done it differently, right? And so she expected you to have done it differently too, which is fine, right?
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah,
And would it be okay to call her on the side and say that to her? Absolutely.
mm,
And that individual may not have felt comfortable to respond to you and say, but that was hurtful because
What happened?
Oh, we can't hear.
You were muted.
not sure why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, can't touch it. So and like I was saying, so the girl you were speaking with may not have had the you know courage to say that she was hurt at the time, right? So I think again, what I like to tell people when you are giving feedback to anybody, whether it's your kids, your spouse, your friends, do it in private, right? Because you never really know what they're experiencing, with whatever they're dealing with, right? And sometimes even if it's something that was, you think that was thoughtless, right? It's like, what were you thinking, right?
Mhm.
Maybe they weren't thinking, or maybe they thought it was okay, right? So it's always best to give people advice in feedback in private because you want it to be about them,
Mhm.
right? You don't know how they see themselves. Maybe she was already self-conscious about her breakouts. Maybe she felt like she didn't look attractive because of her blemishes. So I can understand what the friend was saying, but then again, you didn't see it as something that was um, you know, bad because you are courageous enough to receive feedback that way,
Sure.
right? So when we're giving feedback, think of the other person. Think about how they would feel, how that would affect them, and how they, how it's gonna make the rest of their day, their lives, right, different
Mhm.
in a
Mhm.
better way. You know what I'm saying? And so it wasn't bad that you gave her the feedback, but the fact that when you have blemishes on your skin or when you're dealing with some stuff, you already know, right? You're dealing with them. And when somebody points them out, it just makes it worse, right? And especially when it's done in public, it makes it even 10 times more worse, right? I don't know if it's more, but it makes it worse because it's almost like, well, now you're just pointing out to everybody that I have this, right? That I'm self-conscious, that I'm dealing with this, that I'm not satisfied with. So it's good that you were courageous enough to point it out, but I would say, if you giving people feedback, whether it's, a friend or children or spouse or coworker, try to do it in private, and that way you make it about them and you, and not everybody else.
Yeah, I think I understand. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it's part of
Yeah.
the journey.
Right.
It's part of the journey. Just I like to say that being emotionally intelligent and being self-aware also means that you look at people um, with the lens of um, not a one size fit all approach. Because even with kids, even with your own kids, you can't discipline them the same way because some kids don't 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 react properly to certain types of disciplinary actions. Some kids are fine with just the eye. Other kids you have to, give a little pow. Other kids you give the pow and they're like, what's next?
Right.
So it's a similar idea when you deal with people. Hopefully, you know these people enough to know that maybe this person is just a little introverted. Maybe this person is crazy and it's fine with everything. It's happy-go-lucky, goes with the flow. So once you're able to also deduce that from the environment and from the people you're dealing with, then now that informs the type of interaction and the mode of interaction that you do with them. There's another question in the chat, Mark, and this one is personal.
Okay.
So this person is saying, how do you react to someone who doesn't have emotional intelligence when you are having a conversation? And I'm going to add to this question and say,
Okay.
when you're dealing with somebody who's not emotionally intelligent, it becomes, for me at least, it becomes extremely difficult because in the moment, you're trying to be self-aware. You're thinking, how am I contributing to this toxicity that's happening right now? in the moment. Again, you're still asking yourself, how can I get the most out of this conversation? Like you said in the beginning, what do I hope to get from this interaction?
Yeah.
And you're thinking so many things and still trying to get this person to just see, empathize, just understand you. And it's like a brick wall. So how do you do that?
Well, that's a great question. Actually, I had that question from somebody else the other day. Um, that's when you make it about you, right?
Mm,
You can't control somebody's action or words or the way they express emotions or process information. And so you have to say, well, what do I want to experience, right? Um, it can be frustrating. It can be very frustrating. So what I usually do, especially when I'm having uh, a serious conversation with somebody, right? Especially when it comes to relationship, I like to set the intention for the conversation. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? Right? Make sure we're on the same page. I know it can be very tedious because sometimes when emotions are high, it's like, listen, I just want to express myself. Okay, I get that. Right? I want to do the same thing too. But what do we want to get out of this conversation? Otherwise, we just gonna have a yelling match, a screaming, a competition that's just not gonna lead anywhere. And so I think it's always important to set the intention and to have that self-awareness to say, you know what, this is who I am. I'm not gonna allow you to change that. Somebody may not be able to have a healthy conversation because the way they were taught to have conversation is yelling,
mm,
right? The way they were taught to express themselves is by being mad, right? Or by being dismissive or by cutting somebody off. So you have to take it upon yourself to say, this is who I am. This is how I communicate. I'm not gonna turn into you, right? And then make sure, as hard as it may be, that you remain who you are, that person, right? So if somebody's not getting it, maybe again, boundaries. Maybe you have to walk away. Maybe you have to say, you know what? I understand this conversation is not going anywhere. Maybe we'll just table this conversation for another time. Or maybe it's just not worth it. Right. So
mm, mm.
knowing, yeah, so knowing
Maybe it's just not worth
maybe
it.
it's just not worth it. So knowing when to walk away, knowing when to let go, knowing how to set boundaries, knowing how to remain who you are and not let somebody else dictate how you respond to their craziness or their lack of communication
Mm.
will definitely help you communicate better. It will help you do better and experience life healthier than whoever can't express or manage their emotions.
You know what? Since we're talking about actual life scenarios, I think it's a good time to ask you. When in like what in your life, when in your life did you need to use your emotional intelligence the most, and how did that affect you professionally, personally, however? Just share with us something we can latch onto.
Um, that's a loaded question. Uh,
Unload it. Unload
I
it, Mark.
I have an 8-year-old daughter, and she's very strong-minded, and she's very expressive. When you try to have a when you tell her to do something, she always wants to know why. And that's something I had to learn to be okay with because I didn't want to kill her curiosity. I didn't want to destroy her ability to, stand up for herself and ask questions and wanting to understand. And so I think for me was really wanting to be better for her, right? I wanted to be able to have conversations with her without getting upset, without getting frustrated. I wanted to, have what we call now teaching moments, right? If she does something that's unfavorable or upsetting, I've learned to say, you know what, let's talk about this. Like, why did you do it? Right? Express yourself. And I may not agree with, her explanation, but at least she gave one. At least she was able to express herself. So I think for me, it's just getting to a space where I was able to design what I wanted to experience for myself and what I wanted other people to experience from me, right? So even when it comes to relationships, I was married, and as challenging as it was, I think understanding how to have those conversations without yelling, how to have conversations, whether they led somewhere or didn't, but at least it was a conversation that was understood and heard, right? So I think it's just having that self-awareness to be an active listener, to be able to communicate and express yourself in a way that's understood, right? In a way that you actually also understand other people. And what I had to learn most importantly is to know that it's not about me. Whether
Mm,
conversation, I want the other person to understand me, not so much about me, okay, I want to be understood, right? It's about me expressing myself in a way that actually helps you understand me. It's about me expressing myself in a way that doesn't make me, I'm all good. I know how to do this. It's you, right? It's the other person. But I had to learn that that wasn't what, relationships were about. I had to learn that even having an interaction with friends, that's not what it's about. It's about having a mutual understanding. It's about having a communal experience that actually helps both, or wherever the parties are, to have a better experience and to get to know, right? Me, or whatever it is that I'm trying to express, or message I'm trying to convey. So when I learned that it wasn't about me, and even at the beginning I said not taking things personally, because oftentimes we all do, right? We all say, I know what I'm doing, I know this, it's the other person, and sometimes somebody steps on your foot, and you're like, you did it on purpose, right? It's because you don't like me, and that's taking things personally, because sometimes the other individual may not even be aware that they did such things. So not taking things personally, but also understand how to set healthy boundaries, right? That's important. That's extremely important when it comes to emotional intelligence, knowing when to let go, knowing when to walk away, knowing when to end a conversation before it ends to, before it gets to,
shouting
saying
match.
something that, yeah, something that you may regret saying, right? Before it gets physical, before, you hurt somebody. So it's just understanding, okay, at any moment in this conversation, I know, I'm aware of what's happening. I'm not losing control of whatever this is, because I am emotionally intelligent enough to say, you know what, I can see where this is going. I know, right, what is this going to lead to. So that's really
Oh
when
my
it's a
God.
long-winded answer, but that's when I learned to start prioritizing, not just me as an individual, but the overall
Experience.
connection and relationship and experience.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned a number of things, designing the experience. And I've heard you say that a number of times, designing what you want the experience to be for you and designing what you want to get from it. Again, knowing when to walk away, knowing when to admit that, okay, I did my best. I used all my emotional intelligence skills here, but this is not it. And it's okay to admit that to yourself. And even that in itself is emotional intelligence, right?
Absolutely.
And I also love, but you mentioned that very briefly, the fact that it's important to seek to understand first than to be understood.
Right.
Right. So those are some of the things I took away from all that she said. My next question is, just give us some practical steps, and then we can talk about some obstacles, but some practical steps. Because I heard you say something that sounded like a pause, like in the heat of the moment, being able to just stop and say, this is not going anywhere. What do I want from this? What do I want to achieve? What results do I want from here? Is it going there? If it's not, maybe I should, you know, shelve it for now and come back to it later. So I heard you talk about the pause. So just for the sake of our audience, give us some bullet pointed things that we can do to develop our emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. So my second book, The Power of You, is a 52 chapter book where every week you read about the power of something. And I have a chapter that's about communication, the power of communication. And when you understand that communication is not about me, it's about being understood, right? It's about the other person really getting whatever you're conveying, right? So when it comes to, you know, developing your emotional intelligence, you have to work on self-awareness. You got to have that. If you're not aware of your behavior, you can't manage your own emotions, and you definitely can't manage other people's emotions, right? And I said manage. You can't control other people's emotions, but you can manage them by by dictating how you, right, navigate them, what you do about what they give to you. Because sometimes somebody may start screaming at you. What do you do with that?
Mm-hmm.
It's about you. It's about you doing what's best for yourself and even what's best for that other person. Because if you allow it to, to get to you, you may say something hurtful. And for me, I've learned that if I say something hurtful to somebody, it haunts me for a long time, right? So you have to, again, the theme of the second book, designing your own superpower life. You have to have the emotional intelligence of, self-awareness, empathy, and I can talk about empathetic behaviors. Sometimes people will hurt you, right? But one thing I had to learn: happy, healthy, fulfilled people don't hurt people, right? So if somebody hurts you, it's because they're going through their own, chaotic, right? So internal chaos. And so you have to learn to be empathetic. Not and being empathetic doesn't mean that you have to accept their behaviors. You can be empathetic and say, you know what, you must have been hurting. I get it, but this is a new boundary. You can't have access to me anymore. Or instead of being within the circle, right? I'm putting you on the outside of the circle for a little bit until you learn how to, treat me better, or how to talk to me in a different way. So empathy, self-awareness, and also active listening. Because sometimes we know when somebody's expressing themselves to us, we don't necessarily listen to understand. We just want to respond. And so you have to be able to listen to the other person to understand what they're saying, and not just about what you're feeling and wanting to express. And one thing I like to tell people: think about, maybe it's just me, when you upset, somebody sends you a text message, and you write a dissertation as a response, right? And then you're like, you know what? It's no, it's not worth it. And then you delete the whole thing and send a 2 words response. And it's the same way when we're verbally communicating. You have to say, okay, you have to process. And when you build that emotional intelligence, you process things quickly, right? If I say this, if I allow myself to lash out, to say something hurtful, how is this going to help the relationship? How is this going to help the friendship? How is this going to help the workplace, right? And how is this going to help myself? So you have to get to that emotional space where you have that intelligence to say, what, you know what? Let me take a breath. I really want to respond right now, but wait a minute, take a pause, right? Think about your response, right? Think about what you're feeling right now, and ask yourself, where is this going to lead? What is this going to get to? Is it worth it? Are we going to be good after this? Because sometimes you do things, you can't take it back. You say things, you can't take it back. So you have to think about, what you want to experience, and what you want the other person to experience before you react to whatever's happening around you at that moment.
Thank you, Mark. I had to giggle a little bit. Samira put in the chat, isn't being always emotionally intelligent boring? Especially with your partner.
uh,
That's a good
Great
one.
question. That's a great question. No, it's not. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Um, when you, I wasn't expecting that. But when you're not able to manage your emotions, right? You all over the place. It's chaotic. And I get the culture of, making up, have a fight and
You're muted.
don't know why. It says the host muted me. You muted me. Uh, no, we good. So we are being taught, and I'm gonna say this. Society teaches us that chaos is fun,
Hmm.
right? It teaches us that if it's excitement is craziness. It's something unhealthy. You have to get upset. You have to, it's
The
exciting.
rah-rah.
It's exciting for the moment,
Yeah.
right? But when you can design, right? And I know I'm saying the word design a lot, but it's about you creating your own experience. If you say, you know what, you did something that was upsetting, right? Here's how it made me feel. And based on how I feel, here is what it's gonna make me do. Or if it keeps going, this is what it's gonna turn me into, right? Because oftentimes we can't just walk away from a relationship like that, right? But when you not intentional with what you want to experience, that relationship is gonna shape you into somebody else that you're not, right? So you have to be aware and say, you know what, I can get super excited right now and tell you off. I can get super excited right now and yell at you, or I can get super excited right now and ignore you,
Right.
right? But
Right.
those don't necessarily lead to connection and oneness and togetherness. So you have to ask yourself, if I'm able to express myself in a healthy way, that makes you feel respected. That makes you feel, valued as an individual, as my partner, right? Then that builds connection. It builds intimacy. There's a chapter in the book about the power of intimacy, and it talks about all of that, right? So you have to say, okay, well, I know what I've been taught, whether it's by society or by friends or by observing other people's relationships or by even growing up in a dynamic that was unhealthy. This is what I know, but I want something different, and so I have to be somebody different. I have to do something different. But if you know, but if you allow, whatever you've been taught,
Love the drama.
right, if you allow the drama to dictate how you act or respond or react, it's just gonna dictate how your relationship goes. And Aminata, it's not easy. It's easier said than done for sure, but every aspect of our lives is guided by routine, right? It's guided by structure. Whether it's chaotic, it's a structure we created. Whether it's unhealthy, it's a structure we've created, right? So you can create a structure that actually guides your behavior. And that structure can be intentional, it
Yep.
can be healthier, but it's all based on what you want to experience. If I can't create my own experience, I'm leaving it to chances, to other people to create it for me, right? And I tell you, society will create your foundation for you if you are not intentional, or if you don't have the emotional intelligence to say, you know what, everybody else is doing this, but I can see the detriment in
Mm.
it. Everybody else is acting like this, right? I can see the outcome. I don't,
Going against the grain.
right? I don't want that. This is what I want to experience. For me and mine, this is what I want to experience. For my children, this is the type of relationship I want to have with them. For my, relationship, this is the type of relationship I want to have with them. And so for me to have that, I have to be intentional and self-aware enough to say, I'm designing this. I'm in control of this, right? You can't control it, but you can be in control of it. So you have to want it and you have to have the desire to have it. And that way you can actually, even when it gets difficult,
Yeah.
it's going to get difficult, especially at first, it's going to get difficult. So, but when you want it, when you desire it, when you want to unlearn the past, right? When you want to shape the foundation that you were giving a different way, you have to understand what was given to you and how to reshape that foundation, and not necessarily the foundation, but reshape the structure you build on that foundation if you
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not the foundation, it's the structure we chose
Exactly.
yeah,
Absolutely.
construct on that foundation.
Mhm.
I hear a lot, it's not easy, it's difficult, must not be easy. So we're just going to go straight into the obstacles of it all.
Yeah.
I want to be emotionally intelligent. I'm on this journey trying to be emotionally intelligent. We've all accepted at this point that it's not a destination, it's an ongoing process. So what are some of the obstacles that you've noticed tend to either make us go like, you know what, maybe not. This is not for me. Or
Right.
maybe, oh my God, I didn't think it would be this difficult. What can I do? What are those obstacles that you have found?
Yeah.
And
Well, you have to ask yourself, what does it mean to you?
mm,
Because whether it's healthy or not, we all have our own definition of what healthy is,
all right.
right? For me, something healthy may mean, me telling somebody off, right? Because that way I'm not holding it inside, right? And for somebody else, it may be ignoring people and just keep everything bottled up. So you have to define what emotional intelligence is to you. I know the generic definition, to manage and understand other people, your emotion and other people's emotions, but you have to be able to personally define it based on what you want to experience, right? And so the obstacle could be society tells me I have to be expressive, right? And oftentimes it's not in a healthy way. Okay, that's fine, but how do I express myself? Right? I can be expressive, but if it's loud and disrespectful and I don't take other people's emotions into consideration, it's not gonna help you.
Right.
And another one could be, well, this is what I'm feeling right now, and I gotta be myself. And as myself, you're gonna get the real me, right? That's an obstacle again because we all want to be our own authentic self, and that's great. But again, remember, we were all taught to be who we are by people who weren't necessarily the most emotionally intelligent people. And again, it's not something negative to say about our parents and guardians and whoever with whom we grew up, but it's a way for us to take accountability for our own journey and say, you know what, I was taught to be this way, but I am going to teach myself. I am going to learn to be who I want to be and who is going to be the best for my situation, relationships, children, family, friends, right? Whatever it is. So there will be obstacles and there'll be plenty. Of sometimes again, when you're emotional, that self-awareness can go out the window. When you upset, right? Patience can go out the window. Right? When you're upset, having a conversation, I'm in a calm and collected conversation, can be like, you know what? Nah, not today. Right? You about to get it today. But again, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what do you want to experience? So there will be obstacles. Just like everything else in life. Nothing in life is easy, especially when it's unhealthy, because even if at that moment it seems fun and easy, the outcome will be worse.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but the good thing is when you get on that journey of building a strong emotional intelligence. When you get on that journey to learn how to be self-aware, how to be empathetic, how to be patient, how to be kind, how to be loving, how to be, receptive to constructive criticism, how to listen to other people, just how to be a better, right, healthier, more balanced human being. In the long run, that's going to help you.
True.
it's
True.
it's going to help your close loved ones. It's going to help your children. It's going to help your relationships at work. It's going to help this is going to help life. Right, let's just make it that way. It's going
True.
to help life be better. And I'll tell you honestly, I wasn't always like this. right? I mean, there's been moments where, I was never a fighter per se, but I could be sharp and say something hurtful, right? And like I said, like I realized if I said something hurtful to somebody, it hunts me for a long time, right? And so I had to learn to say, you know what? It may not be about this person, but this is what I want to experience. I don't want to feel bad for saying something hurtful. I don't want to, stay up at night because I said something and I'm thinking, okay, that must be hurting this person right now, right? So you have to have that self-awareness. You have to be able to reflect, right? And that way you can actually think back of what you may have done that could have been hurtful. And we all do hurtful things,
We do. We
despite the
do.
fact that we think we're perfect sometimes, right? But we all do things that, could be hurtful to other people. And not to take away from people being responsible for their own
For the
emotions,
animals.
but we
That's
have
very
to
true.
be aware, we have to be aware of how we, present ourselves to the world around us because it matters.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Mark. Really, the balancing act, the balancing act of understanding yourself, appreciating your emotions, understanding, trying to understand another person's emotions, appreciating their circumstance, and then really trying to figure out your environment and understand that and how that affects both of you in a simple interaction can sounds very daunting. But having this conversation, I hope that this room has at least figured out a couple of, if you don't take anything away and you take just one thing, we will be grateful for the time we have spent together today. I want to open the floor for questions. Again, you can ask your questions by coming off of mute. You could put it in the chat. You could raise your hand, and Mark will respond to those questions. We started a little late, so I see we're a bit off time, but I'm going to allow some more minutes if that's okay with you, Mark.
So
Perfect. Okay, so Mark is here for you people. Ask away. Any questions? You can raise your hands. You can put it in the chat. I'm sure you're thinking of all the interactions you've had, all the confusion, the conflicts, the complicated relationships that we have, both at home and at work. Something must come up. Something must be tagging at you right now. So just field your questions, people. Field your questions. Anybody?
I have one.
All right, Mina, go on.
Mark, earlier you mentioned sort of like taking on criticism. But what if you think that criticism is in bad faith?
Hmm.
it's a good question. Again, so remember, you can't control other people, right? And even if someone intentionally said something just to hurt you,
Hmm.
allowing it to hurt you is on you, right? I know it's hard. Sometimes we have to defend ourselves, but if somebody said something hurtful, saying something hurtful back only hurts us more, right? We delay our own healing process when we get to a space of retaliating because we're hurt. And so I would say, even if something, even if it's that feedback is in bad faith, but knowing who you are will definitely counter that, right? If I know who I am, I know my core essence, right? This is who I am. Somebody could say something hurtful, right? It's not necessarily going to affect me, at least not that bad, right? Because again, I respond to what I believe is true to me, right?
Hmm.
And it's not to say that you're not gonna receive what they say. Yes, you can receive it. And to use this analogy, I'm gonna get very technical right now, right? When you take iPhones and Android, both do the same thing, right? But they have different processors. You can't use, the same processor from an Android to an iPhone. Why? Because they're different, right? Now they're both phones, but they're different. And so when somebody try to give you something, whether it's something hurtful, but when you know who you are, receive it, but don't allow it to download onto you, your processor, onto your mind, your heart, right? Your emotions. Because when people say hurtful things, they say it to hurt us, right? They do it intentionally. So even if it's in bad faith, again, knowing who you are, knowing what you need to experience. Uh,
All right, I got it, Mark. Don't worry.
okay, yeah, so knowing what you want to experience will help you reject, right, what somebody else says. Okay. And again, just because somebody gives you criticism or advice doesn't mean you have to take it. Doesn't mean you have to actually use it. You can receive it, right? But then if you receive it, process it before you start using it,
Right.
right? Because if you start using it right away, that's when it hurts you. That's when it affects you. But receive advice, process it first, see if it's for you. If it's not for you, reject it.
Right. That's very true. I would just like to add that sometimes somebody gives you feedback in bad faith. We can establish that. People do that.
Yeah,
However, I have found that there's some value in ignoring the messenger, but receiving the message. Because sometimes people give you feedback to hurt you in their minds, but sometimes it's something you need to hear.
yeah,
So it's also important to ignore the sound, the noise that came with the feedback, but then receive the information, do the processing, and then decide whether that um, is good for your situation and your circumstance. Because
absolutely.
again, there is no one size fit all when it comes to emotional intelligence, right?
Yeah,
So receive again, but do not internalize until you have processed,
right.
right? I hope I'm saying the right thing, Mark.
Yes, you are.
All
And
right. Anybody else has a question?
so I had one more thing.
Yeah, go on.
It's again, when they say everything happens for a reason, it's true. Everything in life either teaches you how to be or not to be, right? What to do, what not to do, right? So there's always a blessing or a lesson in every situation. So even if a criticism was given in bad faith, okay, well, this is teaching me how not to treat people, right? This is actually bringing awareness to something that, you know what, I never thought of this, but it's not true, right? I can actually reflect on it without internalizing it, right? To actually see, yeah, do I really do this?
Yeah.
Nah, I don't. Right. Or, maybe, right. Let me take a moment. Let me take a moment
Right.
and see if I really act this way. And
Mm-hmm.
if I do, then, you work on it. It's a work in progress. And again, what I like to tell people, give yourself grace. Even if somebody tells you something hurtful, give yourself grace, right? And it's funny to say that because they're the ones that, tell you something hurtful. But even if you get upset, give yourself grace,
Yeah.
right? Even if you're not able to process it in a way that's healthy, give yourself grace,
Be
right?
kind to
I'll
yourself.
get it. I'll get it next time,
Yeah,
right? I'll get it next time. So it's a learning process
it is.
and learning to also be empathetic to others and giving them grace is also helpful to you.
So going once, going twice. This is your last chance to ask another question. Come on, people, any question, because we're well over time, but this is a really important conversation. And I wouldn't want to cheat anyone out of an opportunity to get insight. If you're thinking it, somebody else is thinking it. So maybe if you ask for all of us. So one more question, another clarification, anything? Meanwhile, Mark, do you have any book recommendations for us? I am going to recommend one, The Power of You, because I like the fact that it's a 52 chapter book. So every day it's almost like you're taking baby steps. You start with, crawling, and then you figure out how to hold and stand a little bit. So it's an amazing step by step process to just figuring out that superpower in you and becoming Teflon almost. Yeah, life is difficult right now. The world is stressful. People are stressed. Economies are constricting. So it's a good time to build that Teflon and build that protection around yourself, your mind, and your spirit, and most importantly, your family. So that's a good one. The Power of You. I put the link in the chat. I will put it in again if you like. And then we want to hear another book recommendation from you, Mark.
Sure.
That becomes
Thank you for that. What I'll say about the the power of you as well. It's written in a way that you can actually do some of the exercises with friends and family. At the end of every chapter, you can there are reflective questions you can actually use as a workbook to to have conversations with whoever, right? That maybe it's a reading group, right? Or maybe you want to do it with a spouse, even your children, right? If you want to have that self-awareness and you want to create and design your superpower life, there are questions to think over. And there's also a portion also that talks about what to do for that week, right? So this week, here's what you need to focus on. Here's what you need to do. Here's what not to do, right, for the week.
yeah, that's important too.
It is, it is. So it's a very intentional book, and I believe that it's going to help whoever reads it and whoever uses it wholeheartedly, and not just read it and put it on the shelf. So again, I'm a reader. I love to read books. Despite writing books, I love to read them as well. One book I would say is Daniel Goldman.
Yeah,
He has several books about emotional intelligence, and those are, I mean, they're great. They're great
all of
material.
them.
Yes, they are. If you really committed to increasing your emotional intelligence, if you're really committed to this process, this journey, I would encourage you to check out some of his stuff. And at the end of the day, though, it's really up to you, right? It's
Yes.
on you to want something different. It's really on you to want to experience something healthier.
Mm.
Because again, life will give us
Life
lemon.
be
Right?
lifing.
Life be lifing. And oftentimes, if you're not intentional, if you're not aware, it will take you to places that just hurt you, right?
True,
Hurt
true,
you. So
true.
you
It,
have to design, your own superpower life. And it starts with having these type of conversations. It starts with reading a book. It starts with, again, reflecting on your behaviors. And even so in my first book, I talked about interviewing your parents.
hmm,
Yeah.
that's
So
an idea.
yeah, because sometimes we do things that we don't understand. I've seen families having feuds that they don't even know where it started, right? They grew up in it, and
Mm,
before they know it, cousins stop talking to cousins, parents stop talking to children. But it's a generational thing. So when you can actually find out where it generated, when you can find out, okay, you Mom, Dad, you did this. It was hurtful. I'm not blaming you. I just want to understand why. And sometimes you actually learn that my parents were hurting,
yeah,
right? And when you can learn that, you can actually empathize and extend forgiveness,
true.
right? And so when you can have those type of conversations, again, not to blame your parents, not to blame the foundation, but to actually understand. And when we can learn to understand, we can actually design what we want to experience, and we can design, the world around us and how we want to fit in it and how we want others to fit
In
inside.
out.
Yeah.
That's so true. I love the idea of interviewing your parents. Oh, the kind of things we're going to find out. But that's a challenge for the room, right? That's a challenge for the room. And
Yes.
I just want to be a fly on the wall when everybody has that conversation with their parent. Thank you so much, Mark. I couldn't thank you enough. I knew we were going to talk about emotional intelligence. I didn't know we were going to go this deep. So thank you for that. Baby Lynn, if you could just drop the evaluation in. Uh, it is important that you fill this evaluation for us. because the only reason Mark is here is because you said you wanted to have this conversation. Every month we received the evaluation, the feedback that you wanted us to talk about emotional intelligence, and we did it today. So please take it. It takes what, 2 minutes? It's only 3 questions. Click on the link and just answer those questions for us. We will be very grateful. We're so thankful that you stayed with us today, even though we went, what, 3 minutes off? But it was a juicy conversation. So, hey, what can you do? It's Sunday. And we thank you for just enjoying your Sunday afternoon with us, making time, buying the bundle, the internet, and all that, just to be able to have this conversation and just be part of this beautiful little community that we're trying to create. So thank you for that. Please click on the link for the evaluation. And Mark and I will be on here if you have anything else to do and you've had your fill of emotional intelligence for one day. Feel free to log off, but Mark and I will be here for a couple more minutes. If you have any more questions, feel free to fill them and we will do our best to answer them. In the meantime, please fill the evaluation. It's very important. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you. See you on the last Sunday of September, inshallah. We'll see you then, and we will have hopefully some suggestions from the evaluation to talk about. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I want to say thank you, Khadija, for actually creating this platform because I think it's extremely important to have for people to be able to, again, have these type of conversations because they're not easy.
They're
They're
not.
not easy. And a lot of us, many of us are not having those type of conversations, even though we need to have them. And I think if we could, be honest with ourselves and actually make it intentional, make it a practice to have these conversations, we would actually be better for it. Our relationships would be better, our friendships, our experience in the workplace would be better. And
Yeah.
how we interact with other people
Yeah.
would be better and healthier. So I also appreciate everyone for attending.
Yeah.
I know it's a beautiful Sunday now.
Yeah. It's beautiful outside.
And yeah, no, you've chosen to be here. I implore you and commend you for that.
Oh, Mark, you're muted.
Uh, that's okay. And I thank, each and every one of you for, again, receiving what I said. And remember, it's not, it's not an all be all type of conversation. It's about receiving
Discovery.
and processing it and see if it's for you, right? It's if it's not for you, again, reject it. Maybe the next conversation may be for you, right? But it's about accepting and receiving and embracing information, and then that way you can actually deduct your own reasoning
Very
and,
good.
and find out if it makes sense for you and what you want to accomplish and experience in life.
All right. Mark, I see someone. It's not a question, but I see. Wait, hold on. Sound is not working on my end. Oh, sorry, Charles. Maybe you did not join with your audio on, so make sure your audio is on. Thank you, Mina. Mina says great session. Mark, that's
Thank you, Mina.
you. That's all you today. Got nothing to do with me. Someone says we, Aminata said we must all become self-emotional designers. Well, that's an idea.
Yeah. I think
Oh, and she's placing an order for the book. So,
awesome. Thank you so much.
yeah. Thank you, Yumna. I see you. Very insightful. Thank you. We're glad to have these conversations. And the truth of the matter is, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, is that in having these conversations, we learn more.
Absolutely.
It's almost like you're here, but then you open your mouth and your mind to have these conversations, and then it's like, oh wow, I didn't think about that. Or I
Yeah.
thought about it, but I didn't think about it this way.
Right.
So it's always very eye-opening and enlightening. And I wouldn't have that conversation with anybody,
Right. No,
especially you,
it's
Mark. So
great.
thank you.
Yeah, and it's different from like me having a webinar, right? Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
if I'm having a webinar, I have my PowerPoint, I have my slides, I'm talking. But when we are having a discussion,
yeah.
we actually, like you said, we learn because I'm feeding off of you, I'm feeding off the audience, and we feeding off each other, and
That's
it's
very true.
eye-opening. That's what life is about. That's why we're here, right?
True.
To have to experience each other, to
I'm going
learn.
to stop recording, Mark, so that